Welcome to the Rising for Women podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Merlo-Booth, and I believe the world will be changed for women when we change how we walk in it. So each week, we're going to have hard conversations. We're going to explore new options. Some of them are going to be hard options, and we're going to have some real, straight talk. We're going to do that because I have faith that women can handle it. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the Rising for Women podcast with your hosts, Lisa Merlo-Booth, Dee Marcotte, and Arlene Newman. And our topic today is going to be women in the workplace. And so what we're going to talk about is we're going to be looking at the extremes, how women show up in the workplace on one extreme or the other, and how to find the middle. And one extreme is where women do traditional roles. They placate, they overaccommodate, they get quiet, they don't speak up so much. Or on the other side of it, where women get really, they're like, I'm not going to take any shit from anybody and I'm going to stand up. And they start really kind of going to the other extreme, micromanaging, controlling, kind of taking on the traditional male role. And let's see where it goes. So I'm sure all three of us have had many examples, and many clients come into our offices and complain about what's going on at work. I know I had many female clients who have talked about so many things, the good old boys club, or the, crude comments, or bullying bosses, or women bosses who they could not stand, like all these things. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the extremes that you all have seen in your practice, that we hear about, that we know about, that maybe we've lived. What are some of the ones you guys have seen?
Well, the ones that come into my office are usually the women and the more kind of traditional role end of it, where they don't know how to speak up when they get treated. It doesn't even have to be so extreme by the men, but kind of subtly dismissed or belittled, kind of pushed to the side, not really taken seriously, and not really knowing how to bring their voice in a way that they can get heard and be respected, and without resorting to being kind of bullying and aggressive, how to do it in that empowered way. That's what I see women struggling with in my office.
So let's talk about that for a second. So let's look at that kind of side of the extreme. What are some of the things that we see women doing that is, I would say, playing small, right? Like how are they playing small?
Nutshell.
Yeah. Sheryl Sandberg had one just minor thing that she talked about, where they don't sit at the table. Like just, they're in a meeting, they're in the back of the room, or they are not sharing their opinions. They're just kind of observers, because they get nervous. They get nervous to talk, or they don't want to they don't want to say or offer a different idea because they're certain that they're going to get shot down, and it's like, forget it, it's just not worth it. So I see that. What other things are we seeing that they're doing if they're on the playing small side?
Although one of the things that I thought was interesting that someone pointed out, that's kind of like even before all of that, is so everybody sits at the table, okay? And if a woman doesn't have the agenda or a piece of paper, oh, I'm really sorry, I'll go get that right now. I'm so sorry I didn't have that. I'm really good, Whereas a guy's like, well, why didn't anybody get that for me?
Yeah.
So, but just that, like, it's that kind of an attitude that if I have anything that I'm just not like, then I have to be like apologizing I'm like,
right,
for nothing.
Yes, which is, oh my goodness, one of women's things forever, right?
Thank
I'm
God.
sorry, I'm sorry I'm breathing. I'm sorry I'm breathing too loud. I'm sorry. I like, yeah, I remember when I first started speaking and I was we were doing this little training. A colleague of mine, Don and I were doing this training. And the first thing I said is like, okay, you guys, I just have to tell you that I get a little nervous. So I'm really sorry about that. And after, she's like, Lisa, what are you doing? She's like, you cannot do that. And it was, it was so funny. It's like, oh my gosh, talk about just immediately losing your power and showing them that that you're anxious. So yeah, so we don't want to do that. But women do that all the time, and they do that
all the time. And the other part of that is that women are continually blaming themselves for anything and everything.
Yes.
And we do it all the time. We do it unconsciously. We just believe in some way that whatever is wrong, we are somehow responsible for it, and we have to fix it. We have to correct for it, and it's our fault. And that's one of the big ways that I think we play small.
This is particularly true if you have a colleague who's a hothead, or you have a boss who kind of shames you in front of people, right? And if they're like, well, why didn't you get this done? Or what's going on? You're like, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to. Or even if you have a colleague who you're partnering with something and the project itself didn't go well for some reason, and he or she is kind of trying to put the blame on you, if you tend to be one of the women who play small, who shrink, you're more likely to be like, oh, I should have gotten that. I should have told you earlier. I should have blah, 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 without slowing down and really checking, wait a second, is that true? Am I off on that? That's just your first knee jerk, is to take the blame and try to, apologize and fix it.
And appease.
And appease, right. That's one of the things that is so ingrained in females at any age. It's still happening today. It's this piece where you want people to like you and you want to be nice, and you are going to appease as much as you can to like not get people upset with you. You got to know, in business, that is not, in life anywhere, that's just not possible. Of course, you're going to upset people. Not everyone's going to like you. You're not going to do everything perfect. And women in general have this perfectionism thing. And that can set you up to go on the kind of shrinking piece, but it also can set you up to go to the other extreme, where you start micromanaging and controlling. So, okay. Those are some examples of what's going on. I've had women come into my office, which actually shocked me. And I don't know why it shocked me, but some of the moves still shock me. She had one of them came in and had a close friend who she had shared, my client had shared her idea with this close friend. And the close friend took it to their boss as her idea. And the company like picked it up, and they're at a meeting, and the boss is like, oh, so-and-so had this great idea. We're going to implement it. And my client never said anything. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, why? Well, it's not worth ending a friendship. It's not worth, I'm like, wait a second. That's not a friendship. That is absolutely not a friendship. So I worked with her to actually speak to this person, but this wasn't an outlier. Like, I see this with women often. Somebody will steal their idea, or they'll take credit for something, or they'll shut it down when she says it, but then somebody else will say the same idea and they run with that. And what are some shrinking ways when that happens? What are some things that, are hurtful when women respond when women respond to that in an unhealthy way?
I mean, what is the action that they do not take?
Yeah. Or what action do they take, right?
If any. I think mostly it's they avoid taking an action, because it will, it can create conflict. And I think we're so programmed to try and avoid that and protect our relationships. And there is a lot of fear around conflict between women.
True. Especially corporate America has this, like, originally I thought it was unspoken rule, but somebody told me it's actually a very spoken rule, where you praise in public, you reprimand in private. That is so toxic for organizations. I can't even begin to say how toxic that is. And that teaches women that when you are in a meeting and you have a colleague who calls you out, who shames you, in that moment, you are not to say anything. And then later speak to them, apart. Crazy. Let me just go on. I just want to be very, very clear that that is very unhealthy, whether you're the employee, you're the colleague, or you're the leader who is spreading that idea. So anyway, so that's another thing women do. They get shamed in public, and they get called out by a colleague, and they silence to it. They shut down, and then they think that what they're doing is okay, because later they might go to them and say, hey, I don't like what happened, but you missed the moment. And when you shut down there, nobody knows that you're talking to them outside, and you sent a message to everybody on the team that you can do that. So that is so playing small, not helpful.
Well, I think we have to address the idea that when that happens, I think a lot of women will go into freeze.
Yeah.
That they don't have access to their voice, because I think it's very shocking when that happens in a public meeting where they get shamed like that. So I think maybe we need to also address that, how to help women not freeze and be able to speak up when they're being shamed or attacked or intimidated, or a whole list of things.
I love that. And when we get to kind of what to do, let's go back to that, because that's where we're going to really want to be pulling in more women. But for now, you're right. You can go into shutdown, and you can go into, fight, flight, or freeze. And if you're into flight or freeze, it's very hard in those moments, but we'll talk about that. But that's one of the things that they do.
I want to add, as you're talking about that, like, people have been talking about a fourth one, which is fawn.
Which is what?
Fawn.
Fawn, F-A-W-N? Fawn. Okay.
Which is that appeasing thing we're talking about.
Oh, geez.
How do I fix it? How do I make it okay?
Yeah.
How do I make sure? So all of that.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to throw up.
I know. the word is, but that's true.
But I'm like, that, because I think it's like there's the freeze in the moment.
Yeah.
But what I find is if I have any women who I'm trying to talk to them about speaking up at all, even if it's after the fact, I say, so what did you say? They say, well, I'm really sorry, and I'm sorry I didn't have such and such, and like all of that stuff. That's the fawn stuff.
Yes.
Like, how do I make sure we tamp it all down?
Right. Right.
Oh, yeah. How do I make sure we're okay? Not how do I make sure that I'm okay with it?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And it's not even we're okay. How do I make sure you're okay?
Yes.
Right? You're okay, so that we're okay.
So that we're okay. Right.
Yeah, I can be okay if you're okay.
Yeah. I want you okay with me.
Right. This is definitely like throw up material.
Absolutely. Well, and to do something like, I think of this was many, many years ago, and I was a manager, and I had this male mentor who was really great, but I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and the president was very patriarchal, stereotypical, and I tried to voice an opinion, and he put his hand on my hand and he said, oh, it's okay, we'll handle it.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, Now my
and you're an 8. You go,
Yeah.
you go the other extreme.
Yeah, I was going to say, so my problem is I can go the other way. So I'm kind of like, okay, I have no idea what to do. So I didn't say anything. So I talked to the mentor, and he says, this is what you do the next time. So this is just interesting because sometimes it's not even a statement.
Yeah.
Right? So, and it happened again with this guy, like he like patted my shoulder or something.
Yeah.
So the guy said to go, no, he said, it was just this look of like, what the hell are you doing?
What are you doing?
Right.
He never did it again.
Yeah, that's so funny.
But so I just want to point out that there are nonverbal ways too,
Right.
that are, you know, where we make it obvious that what is happening isn't okay. You know, kind of thing.
Right.
So
But
there's
first,
many
we
ways
have to be
say
clear. We have to be clear that it's not okay.
it's not okay.
Right.
That's the first step. We have to be aware
Mhm.
that it is not okay to be treated that way.
Right.
So true.
Well, and no, like you said, no, not only it's not okay to be treated that way, but we have to get that, like you're saying, that's just not okay. And it doesn't matter if you're doing it to me or you're doing it to some other woman. It's not okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That is so pivotal. It's so
Mhm.
pivotal.
Mhm.
And one of the things women tend to do well is stand up for others, right? They tend to be able to do that a little bit more. We're gonna kind of call to that a little bit later in this podcast. But you know, another thing, several years ago, a book came out. I love it. I know we had talked about it a couple of weeks ago, called "Women Don't Ask," and one of the key things that women do in business is they don't ask for raises. They don't ask for promotions. Instead, what they do is they think, if I work hard enough and I keep on taking more and more and more, they're going to see that I'm deserving. And so I have to show to them that I'm deserving of doing it. And in this book, they did this study, and it was so wonderful. It was such a great study. And they were following all these men and women for their first time job offers. And what they found was that the women, when they were offered their first job, they were so excited that they even got the job, and they were like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I hope that I can earn this, you know, that I can earn this hiring. And the men, as soon as they got offered their first job, they immediately asked for more money. You know, so whatever they were offered, they always asked for, well, could I get more? And the women never asked for more because they were just like, oh my God, I'm lucky that I got it. And the men, on average, got a $4,000 higher starting salary, which over their lifetime ended up being a $500,000 difference in income over the years, because you know, you start with that 4,000, then you got, you know, a 3% increase, a 10% increase on a higher salary. And when they asked the men, you know, well, and then when they were looking at promotions too, women are saying women weren't asking for promotions, but men were going for promotions for jobs that they didn't have the skills for, but they were going for it. And the women weren't going for ones even when they did have the skill, because they just wanted to show that they could do it, and they thought that the boss would naturally ask them. And so when they asked the women were like, well, I just need to work hard enough so that they can tell that I'm deserving of it, and they see it. When they asked the men, they said, so why is it that you're going for a position that you don't really have the skills for? Like, do you ever wonder, like, if you're deserving to ask for it? And the men didn't understand the question. They were like, I don't get, what do you mean if I'm deserving? Like, I'll figure it out. I don't. And so just that is a huge piece that impacts and follows women all the time. And some of the bosses are like, why am I going to, you know, voluntarily say I want to pay you more if I can pay them what I'm paying now and they're going to take on more? I might as well do that.
Right.
So just,
I think this whole deserving thing is huge because it's so clear in the workplace because it's very black and white. But I think women do that all the time. I think they do it in their relationships all the time. They think that they have to give more, do more, and if they don't get what they would like from their partner, they feel angry, but they do more, and they feel like somehow they have not done enough. And it's they play small in every way with that feeling of undeserving, this whole notion of having to earn the things that you need and want in your life.
right.
I don't think there's a woman that, that I've had that doesn't come into my office, whether the boss is not listening or the coworker or they're yelling or whatever those people are doing, that don't come in and say, what am I doing wrong?
Yes.
Always.
It's all part of the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Even in the most extreme situations where there's physical abuse, like in domestic violence, I shouldn't have said that. I know he gets mad. I should watch that. And same with work, same thing. And in relationships, that's so true. Women, they can be dating the biggest jerk in the world. Just the biggest jerk in the world. And when he says he doesn't want to date them anymore, they're like, what's wrong with me? I'm like, are you kidding? That was a blessing. The only craziness about this is that you didn't leave him first.
Right.
It's such a fascinating thing. But that's deep work. That's self-esteem. That's, really, you got to go to the core and do a lot of therapy around that. If you feel like you're not deserving of getting a raise, of getting a promotion, of, being in a relationship, of being treated well, that's going to permeate everywhere in your life. And I think as women, we say this almost every show, that the messaging that has permeated our lives, our culture, magazines, media, is all about us not being worthy.
Right.
And so it's very hard to, you got to really slow that down. Okay, so let's look at the flip side. So lots of things that women are doing that are shrinking. What are D?
I know about being this kind of boss. Unfortunately, I used to be the kind of, not to say I couldn't at any moment, but hopefully I'm a little more with it. But I used to be, it's my way or the highway. If you don't like it, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out.
Yeah.
Would not listen to anybody. It's going to be like that control micromanaging thing. It like just totally. Years later, I was in a singing group with someone I had previously been a boss to. And we fondly talked about my bitch days.
Yeah.
But the thing was, I think it's that idea of, so how I learned, that you manage is by fear.
Yeah.
And coercion and control. And so that was really all I knew at the time in terms of how to manage. No one ever taught me anything else. So that's what I did, and it's kind of like, I don't think I felt that good. Certainly the other people didn't feel that good.
Right.
And talk about being completely unapproachable. And I think the part that's really interesting about this is, so in the book Quiet, which is about the difference between introverts and extroverts, but I think it hits this too, in the micromanaging part. So the people who went in as extroverts controlled and micromanaged how they were going to do whatever it was, folding napkins or something, and said, we're going to do it like this, and that, so we're all controlling, and the introverts kind of went in and said, well, what, let's talk about what we should do and whatever, so that it was more collaborative and cooperative. and they got a lot more napkins. I'm like statistically different number of napkins.
Yeah.
That's the controlling one. So I just think it's, it's interesting that we think I thought I was doing a good job, and I thought I was doing a better job than most, when actually all I was doing was frightening people.
Right. And I think that you bring up a great reminder that many women, and this is true, the further back we go, even more true, where it was hard for women to get into leadership positions. And so the only mentors that they really had were men. And so when they got into the leadership positions, they were leading like men. And many men were aggressive and hotheads, and certainly not all men, but there's a good portion of leaders that were doing that, and especially 10, 20 years ago. Now there's a lot still doing it. But I think women have to be really careful if they're in a leadership position to take the time to think about how do they truly want to lead, and not just mindfully step into what they saw other people doing, And there is very much, I see this with women a lot, even, when you're talking about Black Lives Matter, or you're talking about social justice, or you're talking about Me Too, or you're talking about, any of those like super important issues where women are really, really passionate about, there's a pull to want them to, that's it. You gotta stop taking this shit, and you gotta get big, and you gotta get loud, because they're not gonna hear you. And we still have this kind of undercurrent message that the only way to be heard is for you to be shouting at the, top of the rooftops. And, for a long time, I have said this again and again and again, and I think it's so damaging. The last thing I want, because we've accepted the anger of men, the last thing I want us to do is accept the anger of women. I don't want women turning into bullies because we allow men to be bullies. I would like for us to stop allowing men and women to be bullies. And instead, let's step in grounded, powerful, and strong, not abusive, not micromanaging, not bullying people into submission. Will we get there? I don't know, but that would certainly be my hope.
I think that's what we're all trying to provide the tools to get there.
Yeah.
You have to take the tools and use them. I think it takes practice, and there's a lot of conditioning that we have to overcome.
So much. And, the piece where Dee, you were talking about the micromanaging, and that also comes from women needing to be perfect, right? So you're going to micromanage because you want to make sure everything's just right. And you have the pressure that you're a woman and you're in a leadership position. And if you're a woman of color, even more, pressure to do it right. And so you can have that thing that I don't trust that other people are going to do it as good as I am. So I'm just going to do it, or I'm going to be like watching your every move to make sure, because I can't afford to fail because I'm a woman and I'm a woman of color and I'm, ... So that also can really set women up to go to the other extreme where you're too much, which I think even when you're getting big, you're playing small,
Well, it's the kind of thing that it's, again, it's why do you think we call it my bitch days? Because that's what you get labeled.
Yes.
As a woman who gets loud and big and yelling, and and basically it means that everyone gets to say, well, I don't really need to listen to you.
Right.
Just look at how crazy you are.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot.
Right. And I hate the notion that you can have a bullying man and he's just called strong or tough. And then you have a woman who is bullying and aggressive and she's a bitch. But somehow the man, it's okay. And I don't think either one is okay. And when women are like that, that's not fair. You shouldn't treat women like that. I agree. It's not fair. And it's also not okay that women are going to that. It's not okay just because the men are doing it, but it's tough. And I think women, in my experience working with couples even, right, or individuals, if I have a woman who is either an undershooter who, placates, accommodates, silences, or a woman who is an overshooter who yells and screams and micromanages, the journey to the middle is, if you're an undershooter, you go all the way over to the overshooter. If you're an overshooter, you go all the way back to the undershooters, because the overshooter is so afraid that if they say anything, they're going to blow up again, that they don't trust themselves. So then they start placating and over accommodating on their journey to the middle. And the undershooters are like, okay, you want to hear my voice? Fine. So they go, so I think it's a hard journey. It's going to be a hard journey for leaders as well. It's hard to just go from one extreme just right to the middle. Chances are you're not. You're going to try on the other end, and that's
I
just
think it's
the journey.
It's about learning how not to be reactive, right? Yeah. So both of those extremes are reactive, and learning how to really take a moment, take a breath, and find your more adult voice that you want to bring out.
Yeah.
But that's a practice. You can't just allow your kind of old pattern behavior to run the show,
right? Because
that has not been working for us. Hasn't been working for the world, not just for women. Has not been working.
Right. So, okay. So let's dive into, how do women show up with a grounded, powerful strength? And that grounded, powerful strength is, mutually respectful. What I say is the core component in a grounded, powerful strength is compassion. You have enough compassion for yourself to stand up for you when you need to, while also having compassion for the humanity of the person on the other side of you in how you stand up. And the bottom line rule in that grounded, powerful strength is do no harm. So let's drill down, Arlene, what you were just saying. They have to be mindful. And I would say the very first step of that mindfulness is they need to know what their edge is. What do you do? Right?
What's your go-to place? When you're triggered, what's the most familiar, comfortable first reaction that you will have? So you have to know that about yourself.
When you're off, when you're not thinking, what's your dysfunctional
To me, that's being triggered. You're triggered.
Yes.
You're not in your right mind, right? You're in some historical, traumatized mind, and you're reacting from that place.
And so, all right, so I'm triggered and I'm trying to figure out, how can I tell that I'm triggered? First off, what are some signs that I'm triggered?
I know Terry always talks about the whoosh, right? There's like that feeling where you're not in control. Your body is flooded. Your nervous system is on high alert. It's a whole body experience, whole mind and body and emotional experience.
Yeah. So it's a whole body experience. Each person, the first thing you're going to do to recognize that you're triggered is, where is it in your body? For me, my chest gets tight. My heart starts going, right? Somebody else, it might be their gut, right? Somebody else, it might be.
That would be me. Gut. Everything is always in the gut.
Both of you are gut. And so, okay, so your gut, mine is my chest. And then what's the first move you do? Like, one person's move is going to be to silence and shut down. Another person's move might be to go passive aggressive. Another person's move might be, if you struggle with anxiety, chances are you get nervous about something, like this project isn't going to be done on time, or your employee is going to quit, or something's going to happen. And so your first move is going to be to micromanage them. That's your first move. So recognize your body, and then know, what's my move? What is that knee-jerk move I do before I ever even think, when I'm at my worst, when I'm not at my best, what is that move I do? That's the first place you start.
So that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about the freeze reaction, because if I'm scared, I will freeze.
Yep.
If I'm just triggered into feeling disrespected or stepped on in some way, then I'll fight. But if I'm scared, I'll freeze.
So you have two moves. So that's perfect. So she's very aware. Arlene's very aware of her moves. Okay, I'm either going to freeze or I'm going to go into fix it mode. So
I'm going to fight.
Oh, fight it mode. Okay. I'm either going to fight or I'm going to freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Dee, what are your moves?
I fight and fix.
Fight and fix.
Mm-hmm.
I shut down or fight.
Mm-hmm.
I either freeze or fight.
Yeah.
That's what I'll do.
One of the things I want to say is that's true of me out in the world, in the workplace. And I'm thinking women might notice that as we're talking about these different things, it's be aware of what you do and aware of what you do where.
Great.
Because when I'm out in the world, I'm going to fight or fix. When I'm at home, because again, of all my family of origin issues, I will freeze.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. And that's so common with so many women. Well, most people, you're going to have a different move at work than you're going to have at home. So recognize that and know what you're doing. Okay. So the first move is you got to recognize, you have to know your move. Then you have to recognize when you're triggered, and then you need to slow down. And so slowing down is, take a deep breath, pause, close your mouth. Don't do or say anything first. Just recognize that you're triggered, and then you got to ground yourself. That's the first thing you got to do. If you silence, you got to take that deep breath, slow your heart rate down. I always say breathe into your heart because your heart starts going faster. So you're going to breathe into that heart and try to slow the beating down. It's a slow breath. And there are 1,000 different breathing techniques. There are so many. The easiest one that I do is I breathe in to 4 and I release to 4. Sometimes I'll breathe in to 4, I'll hold it 4, and then I'll breathe out 4. It depends. Sometimes I'll do either one. Those are just easy ones, but there are 1,000.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What else?
Find one that works for you and that you like.
Yes.
I might even start a little earlier than we have just started.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, well, maybe in the middle, is observing, recognizing what your move is, but then wherever you're at, whatever your workplace is, the coworker, the boss, whoever, they're predictable. So like have some scenarios and then talk with people, talk with a coach, a therapist, somebody who is going to be able to either help you with how to speak up or help you how to speak up relationally if that's not what you do, so that you can practice. Because I know that was the thing for me. I mean, I even had something as recently as yesterday where I had to say to a friend, okay, how would I say this?
Yeah.
Because I know my way of saying it is, it was kind of like, I don't want to do
your
that.
Dog is out, Dee, right?
The dog will be out.
Yes.
And so, I was kind of like, so help me with how does one say it?
Yeah.
Softer. I need help with how to be softer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to do that. Mm-hmm.
And the flip side of that is, how the other people tend to respond, and don't take on their response, right? You are responsible for your side of the equation only. And that's a lot to be responsible for. You're not responsible for how they respond. So don't take, just recognize, use your boundaries with that. If you have a crazy boss and you're going to dare to say something, no matter how relationally you say it, you need to expect that if they're always defensive, they're going to be defensive with you. And that's okay. right? Like, don't take that on.
I think that's a great point, because I think in this place of how to say something, relationally, we are looking at what you are going to do in your GPS. And I get so much from women, well, but they're going to fill in the blank. And it's kind of like, yes, they are. The fact that you are working on you and speaking up relationally with a GPS, that's all about you. I don't know what they're going to do over there.
Right.
And it seems like women have a really hard time.
Oh my God. Also, they worry about they're not going to get what they want. If they do it that way, well, it's not going to work, or nothing's going to happen, or he's not going to change. And to get them to take their eyes off of the partner, and know that it's really about keeping their eyes on themselves. That's the goal here. And that has value.
Right.
That's doing something very important. And so we have to kind of help them see the value of really valuing oneself, valuing one's own experience and how we end up feeling as a result of our actions, not the other person's reaction to us. Right. It's a big shift that we're asking for here.
It is. It's a huge shift. It's the only place you have power. And right. Too many women waste their power on trying to change the other person. You have no power over there. You got to figure out, where's my power? What do I want? What am I willing to accept and not accept? And then I need to stand behind that. And I need to do that with clean energy and in a clean way. But what they do, they're going to do. Some people are just really, really unhealthy. And it doesn't matter what you do. It matters to you, right? I mean, it sends a message to you, because if somebody's treating you really poorly and you stand up for yourself, it sends you a message that I'm worthy. It also sends that message to them. That doesn't mean that they're going to treat you well, but that's the message that you're sending. If you don't stand up for yourself because they're just going to get angry, then you're telling yourself you're not worthy, that their anger and their upset is more important than you being treated well. And that is way too costly in the long run.
Maybe that goes back to the thing we're talking about before, about feeling that we have to earn positive anything, positive regard, acknowledgement, or whatever. So we then need the other person to treat us differently in order to feel like we're okay.
Yeah.
So it's back to, you have to find that place in you where you feel that you deserve to be treated with, you say compassion. What I like to use is respect. Respect. Self-respect, respect of other, but really respect to me is the key.
Yeah. Bottom line.
Your reactions and your feelings and who you are with respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about, one way for women to start showing up in business healthier is you got to be more mindful. So it's doing all the things that we're saying: slow down, be mindful, take a moment to ground yourself. Don't be reactive on either extreme, either end of it. Don't be reactive. And if you're not being reactive and you just tend to be placating or a bully, you still have to work that. You got to, if that's just how you show up in the world, then you want to look at that and you want to do I would say you want to do some deeper work if that's just how you're showing up, because that is holding you back, and it just will. Let's also talk about some other things that they can do. What are other things women can do to really start creating healthier business environments, creating, what can they do to start shifting things in the world of business for women, for themselves, but also for women?
Well, you mentioned it before, and I think that that's really important, where women support other women, where when they see something happening, let's say at a meeting, if a woman got shut down or she got dismissed or she didn't get recognition for what she had put out and somebody else did or a man did, the if other women are there to speak up, say, hey, wait a minute, that came from her, you know, and so the women feel that the other women have their back and they're not alone. Because I think it takes a village.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it's so funny. When you just said that, it reminded me. So I was working with a client, and then another therapist who happened to be a man who was her son's therapist, right? And so we were trying to kind of collaborate and come up with some ideas around, okay, how are we going to approach this particular issue? And so I came up with an idea and I said, I think this might work. And she was like, I love it. And he was like, oh, that's a great idea. I think we should start implementing that. And then 2 days later, I got an email from her to both of us saying, you know, I loved, let's say his name was Tom. I loved Tom's idea, ... You know, we're going to do it. And it was really interesting. My knee jerk was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like, that was my idea. And then my other knee jerk was, well, don't make a big a deal about it. It's not that. And then I was like, okay, whoa, wow, that's it right there.
Right
And
there.
and so then the three of us were doing a call, and I was going to address it, but she happened to say something about, oh, his idea. And I said, oh, hold on a second. I meant to, you know, I wanted to talk about that. It was actually my idea. And then he said, oh yeah, I wanted to say that it was her idea. I noticed that in the email. And so it was just a funny dynamic of how hard it was. This is my work, and how hard it was to kind of find my voice and stand up. I still had that knee jerk was, Lisa, let it go. It's not that big of a deal.
It's not that's the line. Let it go. It's
Let it
not
go.
such a deal. It's not such a big deal, right?
Right.
Let's not make a big deal out of it. It's not worth it.
Yeah. So that's so recognize that when you're in a meeting, and you know, that's just what happens. What Arlene just said happens, right? You have a colleague, and let's say she or he shuts down another female colleague, and that colleague doesn't say anything because they might have that knee jerk, you know, freeze. And they're like, you know, because they're not saying anything doesn't mean it's okay. And it's your job to start creating a culture that is safe for women. And so you need to be like, hey, wait a second. You know, that was really rude what you just said. Hold on, you cut her off. Go ahead, Sally, say what you were saying. And if all the women in that can start kind of creating that new habit, and the men who are brave and courageous men, they come in and they start doing it too. Now you're shifting a culture. But I really think it's so important for women. You have to have each other's backs in a whole new way that is so contrary to one, what's okay in corporate America, and two, what we've been raised to think is okay. But that you need that in the minute to minute interactions happening day to day. Somebody's doing, you know, somebody comments, you walk by a guy and he's like, oh, look at that ass. You immediately say, hey, whoa, that's sexual harassment. Are you aware of that? If I hear that again, I'm going to report it. And if he's like, oh, you know, then another woman says, yeah, and if she doesn't, I will, you know? And so you start just creating this new way of being where everybody in the culture understands, oh, we're like all responsible for raising up this culture. Okay.
God, that sounds so good.
It does. Really.
That sounds so good. For women to really have each other's backs like that, because I think half the time I think men are not even aware of what the hell they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's so automatic to behave in certain ways, and unless we bring attention to it and call it out, it's not going to change.
Right. And that goes for women too, who are like flirting and making comments about the guys, you know, both ways. Yeah, we got to call women out on their bad behavior as well. Sorry, Dee, what were you gonna say?
That's okay. I was just thinking, it's kind of like, so the dysfunctional good old boys club you know, our counterpoint is the Empowered Women's Club.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Yeah. There are strength in numbers. And women, we need the numbers. And we need the numbers to be healthy and moderate, not like it. We can't start making extreme, like just be really, really clean around what it is that you're looking at, what is okay, what's not okay. Sometimes I feel like we're going to such extremes and calling things bad or wrong or whatever that just aren't, and letting go of things that really are. Like we got to really get centered on this and really pay attention to it. And I think that's the only way we're going to be shifting things is if we have the numbers, you know. And I just wanted to, there was one stat that was interesting. It said 35% of women in full-time corporate sector jobs have experienced sexual harassment. 75% of those will not report.
Wow.
Of the 75% of victims of sexual harassment who did report, I mean, of those who did report, 75% of them were retaliated against. So this is another place where other women need to like band together, and the cool men, the strong men, the courageous men who are willing to say, you know, hey, this is wrong to other men, that needs to step up. Because when you have 75% of victims not reporting because they're going to be retaliated against, that environment is hurting you, whether you know it or not. And it's certainly hurting the business. So anyway, what are some other thoughts?
We have a lot of work to do. That's
Yeah,
my thought.
a lot of work to do.
be done.
Inch by inch, interaction by interaction, moment by moment.
You know, I think in a past podcast we had talked about like when Kamala Harris was in the vice presidential debate.
Yeah.
But I think there was a moderate moment there, like when she says, "I'm speaking."
Yes.
Like she just stayed firm. She didn't get immoderate.
Right.
But she stayed firm with, no, you can't, that's not okay. You can't do that. And I'm speaking and I'm going to hold my ground about that.
Yes.
And so that just came to my mind as, you know, maybe to begin, maybe now we're going to start getting some models that maybe are moderate about how to do this.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's
true.
a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine if I was in her place, I would have to manage my rage, you know, that immediate kind of like, and
yeah.
I wasn't going to have a what, I would have had a tornado.
You would have had a tornado. Yeah. Yeah.
It can come out in your tone. I mean, you really have to learn how to manage that feeling. When I know for me, when I feel like I'm being stepped on or disrespected in some way, I just want to go for the throat. And to learn how to just take that breath and come back and I'm speaking now. Excuse me, I'm speaking.
And let's be very, very clear that we are not saying that because we are trying to settle down women. Like, you know, there's this whole thing. Yeah, it is not that we are trying to settle down women. It's because it is more powerful when you are grounded and you come in very matter of fact, straight. It is way more powerful than being reactive and being a bully and coming in like a bat out of hell. It just is. And so this is not about settling down. I want men to do the same thing. When I see a raging man, I just think, oh my God, he's crazy. I don't like, I'm not thinking, oh, look how powerful he is. Not at all. I think he's out of control. And the only way he knows how to get what he wants is to bully. And that's like really unfortunate. That's not powerful. With Kamala, what was so great about that it's another skill for women to have. When you are in a meeting, and when I was looking up stats and kind of women in the workplace and what's going on, one of the things that they've been talking about now with the pandemic, that women are feeling like they're having a hard time finding their voice on Zoom, on, well, whatever their, online is, and that they're feeling like they're being overlooked. So women, notice that. You're on a meeting, you're in a conference meeting, you got everybody's heads, you see everybody's, and if you see somebody they have their hand raised, or they're like, they want to answer something, and they keep going to the men, when a woman is, unmuted, that woman wants to say, hey, I just want to notice something about the dynamics of our team. And I'm asking all of us to hold this for us. That often when there are 10 women's hands up and one man, the man is getting called. I want us to notice that. I'm also noticing that when women are speaking, that they're getting cut off. That's not okay for me. And then the other women want to be like, yeah, I agree. I've noticed the same thing. So we want to start practicing it everywhere, but it's an easy, lighthearted thing that you can do. Sometimes you can be like, whoa, you just interrupted me. Right? Or what Kamala said, I was speaking. And then you just wait for a moment and let them, and it's going to be uncomfortable. That's okay. That's where change can happen. Don't say I was speaking and then it gets silent. And then you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say it like that.
Mhm.
It gets silent and then you're like, thank you. And then keep talking. Or don't say thank you. Just keep talking. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
I just had this experience as you were talking about saying, I'm speaking, and you said a moment of just quiet. And I thought, well, I can't be quiet, because if I'm quiet, I'm going to get interrupted again. Somebody's going to jump over me. And I'm aware of it's so deeply embedded, this idea that if I don't jump in and take as much space as quickly as possible, I'm going to be shut down.
Mm-hmm. You again,
it was in my body. It was like, yeah. I had like a moment of going through that whole scenario, right, and realizing how hard it is to trust that if I take that moment of silence, I'm going to be able to come back powerfully and clearly and be heard.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a thing, like often that happens, right? And so either they take the moment of silence and the other person shuts them down, and then they're like, oh, well, I tried, this won't work. And then they don't say anything again, right? Or they say that and then they're like, da, 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 right? Which is still reactive. And so if you step in and you say, I'm speaking, and there's like a moment there, and then they jump in, you want to say, whoa, wait a second, you just did it a second time. Mm-hmm. Okay, people, da 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 da. Like, don't just because you say it once, if it hasn't stopped, you got to keep doing it, Right. And that's where other people can be like, wait, you just did it again.
Right.
We
may need other people's voices, mm-hmm, until our voice gets strong enough. It's like training wheels. we need the support.
We support each other. We do it. So, all right. Any other thoughts or questions? I mean, I think we gave them a lot of tools, enough, practice these, see what you do. The other tool that I often tell my clients about is just be the mirror. Just be the mirror. And the mirror is, you just name what they're doing. If somebody snaps at you, you say, you're snapping at me, mm-hmm, right? You just hold up a mirror. Or somebody snaps at you, you're like, wow, that was intense. It just draws attention. It's the lowest risk way. And then they can see themselves. So that's another just quick tip that you can do. So start playing with these, start practicing these, start noticing that when it's not happening to you, but it's happening to others, be their backbone. Stand up for that.
And work on managing your own reactivity. Always. It's a muscle that needs to be built.
Yeah. Again and again and again. The more you pay attention, the more you do it, the stronger it'll be. the stronger you'll get with managing yourself. Dee, any thoughts?
No, like you said, I think we covered it well. And I think it is like the biggest thing is just going to, this first part is observing. What do you do? What do you do when it happens to you? What do you do when it happens to someone else?
Great. So that's your challenge this week. What do you do when it happens to you? What do you do when it happens to somebody else? Do that for the first week. The second week, actually try to step in different. For the men, how about same thing for men? What do you do that's shutting women down? What do you do that is, are you on which extreme are you? And then the other thing, when somebody is really shutting women down, be the person to step in on that. Step in. Don't just let it go or laugh at it.
We can create change that way.
Right. And leaders, please watch this in your organization. You should always have your finger on the pulse of this in your organizations. Okay. So that's it for this week on Women in the Workplace. If you like it, share it. If you want to see more, send us an email, write a comment. If you have questions, write a comment at the bottom, and we would love to hear from you. All right.
Okay.
Thank you again for joining us this week. And always remember, you have the power to change the world for women by changing how you walk in it. I challenge you to choose one way to stand in your grounded, powerful strength this week and be part of the ripple of change.